Welcome to the Atheist Nun channel, a show aimed to inspire readers to cherish the most meaningful moments found in life by learning about secular morality. Subscribe for more content on aspects of my business and writing life, as well as topics concerning ethics, mid-19th century living, etiquette, and much more.
Well, that doesn't surprise me, actually, because you have one quality which I, again, really admire, which is your dedication to seeing things outside of your own, the narrow tube that we all live in, seeing the bigger picture. And I love that. I think it's so important and wonderful to hear it. You made a bunch of allusions to superintelligence, presumably the AI we keep hearing about.
Yeah.
And since you're in that business and this is what you think about, describe what that means exactly. What will AI mean? Like in 10 years, like specifically?
Nobody knows. What we do know is that software can be programmed and mathematical functions can be organized to do things that we humans do, and they can do them much better, and even do things that we humans can't do. So we've seen this where I just took my first self-driving car ride in San Francisco last week. Held it, got in, entirely autonomous. And that's a remarkable feat, that it is capable of driving a car. It reads medical imagery, right? It flies airplanes. So we know algorithms are very good at doing many things. And they're getting better all the time. And so what I'm observing is I'm saying that AI is progressing at a speed that is impressive, and maybe even unfathomable to how we can observe it, much faster.
That's right.
And it's doing these things that we humans do, and it's going to increasingly do those things, and it will help us achieve our objectives, so we're going to say yes to it. Now, when these algorithms become as good or better at being us than we are, then it creates an invitation to say, who are we? And that's what I'm saying is AI is going to create a series of existential crises for the species. It'd be basic ones like, do we trust our government? Who's in authority? Who verifies identity? All these basic things we've settled as society, roughly, it's going to call into question everything at a speed that won't allow us cycle time to really fill it out. And so we're going to have this feeling of bewilderment where it's moving very fast, we can't keep up. How do we stop ourselves from falling into anarchy? Now, when that happens, we say, what games do we play as a species? What do we do? And that's why I'm saying it's time to rally around this don't die concept. Don't die individually, don't kill each other, don't kill the planet, and align AI with don't die. That our singular objective as a species, even though this sounds unimaginable right now, like from our vantage point, that's no way, impossible. You just look at the underlying characteristics of how this is progressing. To me, it feels inevitable. Over some time frame. Is it 2 years? Is it 10 years? Is it 20, 50? I don't know, but it's basically now.
Now they delve into a discussion of exactly what AI is and means. I do think artificial intelligence will force us into asking more questions about ourselves, but that does not mean these series of zeros and ones are the same as the organic creatures we are. It is already apparent that AI assists us in so many ways today, from the computers in our pockets to the surgeries completed with robots. There is no doubt that these machines will help us learn more so much faster and efficiently than ever before. However, I do not think this will change fundamental human nature or replace us in any meaningful way like so many people seem to fear.
I mean, there's no question you're right. If the Industrial Revolution, the steam-powered loom in England, gave rise to Marxism in the First and Second World Wars and Vietnam and Korea and every other conflict for 100 years and the deaths of hundreds of millions of people, technological change causes displacement.
Yes.
The fall of religions, the fall of empires, the murder of millions. So what will AI do?
Exactly right.
I couldn't agree more. I just wonder, like, what does it mean to be a human being if you have no autonomy? I'm an adult man. What does that mean? It's not just a measure of my age. It's a measure of my ability to make decisions about what I want to do and what I think and how I live and how my family lives. And so without that, what is the point of living? In other words, I said I don't want to be bossed around by a machine, which is a pretty shallow answer.
But I understand.
I didn't explain it because I don't fully understand it.
Yeah.
How I feel about it, but something in my dog sense, my gut level
Yeah.
tells me I don't want to live that life.
Yeah.
I'd rather be dead.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. I absolutely empathize with your reaction. And so the thought experiment is to provoke that exact emotion. It's meant to say, I hate this idea, and here's all the reasons why.
Yes.
And then once you get those on the table, you can then have some kind of detachment and say, why do I think those things? Like, what is this concept of me making decisions? Like, let's just break that apart. And that's why it takes 2.5 hours to get through this. You need to hear other people's perspectives.
I agree.
People need to say, I hate it. Some people say, I love it. And be like, but hold tight. Like, here's an example that you do already that challenges your notion on this ability to make decisions. You're like, oh, damn, good point. So it really takes time to work through your own beliefs and understandings, because oftentimes it's just packed so deep, you can't get through it. And we give each thought 5 seconds in our modern society.
Yes.
We can't get deep. And so I understand your reaction. And Tucker, if you come to the dinner, I promise you'll leave with a changed understanding of existence. This is not an easy topic. It really takes time to cycle through it, to be open-minded, to hear other people. But everyone gets there. Like, every single time, everyone gets there.
What do you serve? Is it all broccoli?
I do serve Blueprint food. Yeah. So it's the 2 dishes I told you about.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting in and out before I come, but whatever. That's just me.
All right, so Tucker then says, if the Industrial Revolution, the steam-powered loom in England, gave rise to Marxism in the First and Second World Wars and Vietnam and Korea and every other conflict for 100 years, the deaths of hundreds of millions of people. You know, technological change causes displacement, the fall of religions, the fall of empires, the murder of millions. So what will AI do? Wow. This sounds like a Marxist professor talking about how awful the Industrial Revolution was for all of humanity, rather than focusing on how many millions of lives new technology and innovation saved. To hear this sentiment coming from someone on the right is doubly astonishing. Truly, there is not much difference between the religious right and the atheist left when a morality of death is at the center of each. And then Tucker jumps to autonomy and AI somehow taking free will away from humans. That is quite the jump, in my opinion, since nothing can stop a man from using his own mind, and therefore his free will to make decisions.
So I said when you asked, like, would I be willing to follow the instructions of the algorithm, and I blurted out without thinking about it, no.
Yeah.
And then I admitted, in the interest of honesty, that I don't really have any reasons for saying no, other than my animal sense tells me, no, that's slavery. You can't live like that. You'd rather be dead, which is how I feel. That was my instinct speaking, which I regard as a kind of co-equal with my rational sense. Right?
Yes.
I don't think it's just like some dumb impulse. I
Yes.
think it's worth paying attention
Yes.
to. Do you feel that way? Do you have instincts? Do you follow them? Do you attach meaning to them?
I do. Every time I engage in a thought, I observe the first 4 to 5 thoughts my brain has
Yes.
as incorrect.
Interesting.
They're usually almost always wrong. And it's like there's a bias attached to this one. This one's coming out from a preconceived notion. This one has
Sure.
like some self-interest. And so I'm constantly trying to be aware of what's wrecking my ability to see things clearly at all points of time. And so, I learned this. I was chronically depressed for a decade.
A decade?
A decade.
The decade that you were succeeding in business?
Yeah, that's right. I was building a startup. I had 3 little babies. I was trying to leave my religion. I was in a challenging relationship. So it just all packed into a tight, and that's when I was overeating every night to try to soothe my own.
What were you eating, by the way?
We always had some sweets in the house. My partner had a sweet tooth. And so it was always, brownies or cookies or leftover cake so it was always like, just one bite and then led to a second bite. And then tomorrow we'll work out really hard and work off all the calories.
Did that work?
It didn't. I failed every single night. And the only thing that gave me liberation is one night I was just desperate. I mean, I was so miserable. I hated myself. I felt so ashamed that I couldn't stop this terrible behavior, I said, "Evening Brian, you're fired. You make my life miserable because in the morning I would work out, I would eat a really great breakfast. All day I would be disciplined, great. And then nighttime would come, I would bathe the kids, get them to bed, tell them stories. And then that moment would come, like the brownies, just one bite of the brownies because all the pain.
This is like the Mormon version. You know what I mean? You're not like going to the crack house.
Oh, that's funny.
You have a whole stable of hookers.
Yeah.
You're eating the brownies.
Yeah. And so I basically created a character of myself. And so I would say, all right, when I saw Evening Brian pull up and he'd give me all these really compelling reasons, like tonight's the last night, like tomorrow morning we'll work out extra hard. And I'd say, I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. So I fired him. So 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., I remove my ability to eat. Just like, no matter what, it doesn't matter what the occasion is, you cannot eat food. And so I started playing with my different characters of Brian, like Dad Brian, Work Brian, Evening Brian. And I found it really liberating that I'm not the behavior. I'm not that actual practice. And so this is when I started doing Blueprint as well, of like, could I construct an algorithm that actually improved me? Because I spent all day building technology in my company, Braintree Venmo. You would write the code and the technology and improve it. And then you would improve it again and again, version 2, version 3, version 4. So all day, my technology got better. And every day, I got worse. And I couldn't fix my own problems. And it was such a weird juxtaposition where technology is improving radically and I'm getting worse. So it's like this difference. And I thought, this is wild that as a species, we're so focused on the improvement of our technology, and we are this self-destructive species in every regard. It's like, what is happening?
Well, that's the question. That's the unanswered, the question that remains unanswered. And of course, every religion answers it very neatly and sensibly, I would say, and every religion always has.
I don't really have any reasons for saying no other than my animal sense tells me no. That was my instinct speaking, which I regard as a kind of co-equal with my rational sense. Ayn Rand sums up perfectly that an instinct of self-preservation is precisely what man does not possess. An instinct is an unerring and automatic form of knowledge. A desire is not an instinct. A desire to live does not give you the knowledge required for living. And even man's desire to live is not automatic. Your fear of death is not a love for life and will not give you the knowledge needed to keep it. Man must obtain his knowledge and choose his actions by a process of thinking, which nature will not force him to perform. Man has the power to act as his own destroyer, and that is the way he has acted through most of his history. So another thing that separates us from any other animals is our need to learn what will allow us to survive. It is not automatic. If you are having a gut feeling about something, it means that your subconscious has some kind of answer that you are not yet consciously aware of yet, or your emotions are sending out signals of danger, but that is not knowledge. And Brian's admittance of his own depression taking over his life means that he lacked the desire to live and was making decisions counter to life. That has nothing to do with his own mind being wrong or untrustworthy, but everything to do with how he was interpreting his situation. It made sense to him at the moment to go for that brownie to bring momentary pleasure in the face of the utter sense of hopelessness he felt. That is not irrational per se, but it is not the best way to live or find genuine happiness, and he learned to overcome that hole he put himself in.
And it does strike me, if you're looking back into history, that this is the only period post-war, post-World War II, where you've had a society at scale that assumes that there's nothing beyond itself. And so that raises a lot of questions. But the first is, like, why did every previous generation assume there was a God, but we don't? Like, were they all insane? Or, like, where did that come from?
If someone believes in God or not, or an afterlife or not, that's great. Like, I personally think everyone come together on this. We already agree on don't die. All of us do. So whether we have a story about what happens in the afterlife, it doesn't really matter. What we do agree upon right now is none of us want to die right now, not in this moment. So let's just build upon what we agree upon in this very second.
No.
Amazing. Tucker says, and it does strike me, if you're looking back into history, that this is the only period post-war, post-World War II, where you've had a society at scale that assumes that there's nothing beyond itself. Why did every previous generation assume that there was a God, but we don't? First of all, not all people have believed in religion, and many were forced into it, into whatever religion controlled their region for the majority of human history. You'd be killed if you thought otherwise. And while it's true that there is a growing number of atheists in this world, Christianity and Islam still reign supreme. We are seeing this atrophying in religion because of all the newest science and technology that has been created. There are many answers we now have that we simply did not have before. Creation myths were the best way for Homo sapiens to explain how things happened, and that is why religion was the first stepping stone toward philosophy in explaining our world and how it works. The more we care to learn about things like our appendixes, the more we understand that everything can be explained in this world and not in some divine, unknowable realm. To which Brian replies that it doesn't really matter whether we believe in God or not. We already agree on don't die. All of us do. Now, I have explained in a previous video that this is simply not true. Those depressed or terminally ill people out there no longer believe in don't die. It is a choice people have to make daily. I just think Brian Johnson's premise is wrong, and Tucker sniffs this out with him by continuing to bring back the idea of self-harm.
I don't know that we do agree, actually, because there's no meaning without a power beyond ourselves, is there? I mean, there's only this sort of like shallow, silly, or sets meaning that we attach to various things like sex or living longer or feeling good or whatever, but there's no meaning beyond our physical momentary experience, whereas a person who acknowledges a power beyond himself attaches ultimate moral meaning to events, right? So like you have like no God, no meaning, or am I missing something? It's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I guess I try to speak in the world that I can operate practically. And so your thought of meaning is a biochemical process in your brain. It's a thought you have. It's a biochemical state you experience, whether it's love or whether it's meaning making or whether it's belief in death. You're experiencing this thing as a human. We can engineer this with predictability. We can engineer atoms and molecules and organisms. We can do this in the form of creating drugs today. We do this in the way of creating, various medicines. We do this in creating implants. Like, we're getting increasingly good at doing this. And so much of our reality is going to become increasingly engineered. So
I know.
And so we're heading down this path where our digital reality, our physical reality, all realities, now we have the source code to do this. And this is why I'm saying that if you take any preconceived notion about being human, any ideas we have about reality, they're a representation of what we've been doing for thousands of years. Some of that may carry over, but maybe not. And so I'm inviting the conversation to say, this moment is not like the previous moments. Very, very different.
But here's the practical, and I just want to restate, I respect what you're saying, and I think you seem really honest and open-minded. So this is in no way a slight. But the core problem, however, is that in a moment of technological change, really revolution, unimaginable, everything you said sounds right to me.
This is yet another idea that I have discussed before, and it boggles my mind every time I come across it. Tucker says there's no meaning without a power beyond ourself, is there? I mean, there is only this sort of like shallow, silly, or sense meaning that we attach to various things like sex or living longer or feeling good or whatever. But there's no meaning beyond our physical, momentary experience. Whereas a person who acknowledges a power beyond himself attaches ultimate moral meaning to events. No God, no meaning. I simply cannot fathom a person who does not look at their spouse for who they are and love them for their values and physical form. How could you feel anything higher than what is right in front of you? I plan on worshiping, yes, worshiping my baby when she arrives because of the potential she has and the perfection that she already is. To me, that does feel spiritual, but it does not need to ascend to some higher plane to be real and intense. It almost feels like Christians live with this foggy window between them and reality, unable to feel spiritually for the things that are the here and now. Even an insect who lives for a day has no clue that his life is tiny, momentary, fleeting. He survives by his instincts and lives with every fiber of his being for that brief time, as if he would live forever in such a manner. Humans do not live like bugs, though. We produce and make marks all over the future of our race. We leave ripples in our wake, and our names can be carried on past our lives. Why do you need anything more? And of course, Brian Johnson comes back with the biological squirtings idea that that's where our meaning comes from, rather than understanding that human beings get meaning from the values they achieve throughout their lives. It is a process that requires action, not just chemical integrations, though we do rewire our brains with every experience we have. And it is true that we do live and experience in a particular body where mind and body are inextricably intertwined. But the body without the mind is non-existent. We are more than those chemical processes our body goes through. We must use our rational minds to survive, which is why we need a code of morality in the first place. In my opinion, you cannot engineer meaning for an individual human being. They must figure out what that is for themselves through their own personal experiences and physical nature in space.
You need a framework by which, or with the help of which, you make important practical decisions. We used to call them moral decisions.
Yes.
So if there's no acknowledged power beyond people, or only the power that we create through these machines and their giant data centers, then how can we say, if I feel like killing you,
Yeah.
because it pleases me,
Right.
how can we oppose that? How can we say that's wrong? We can't actually say that's wrong. We can say it's inconvenient, or it's, detracts from GDP, or it's unhelpful,
Yeah.
but we can't say it's wrong.
Yeah.
How could we?
Yep.
Right?
I agree. So we've settled many of these questions today. Like, if you want to kill somebody and you actually do it, there's consequences.
But why?
It's the way we've resolved the moral and ethical question in our society.
On what basis?
Agreed. But we've solved it somehow.
We haven't solved it. We just, the government has said you can't kill people.
Right.
But by your own description, governments are going away. Clearly they are. I don't even think they really exist now. What are countries? It's meaningless, right?
I agree.
Of course. So some dude in a faraway city says, I can't do that. Well, says who?
Yeah. So
it doesn't have any meaning at all, except to the extent that you can punish me because you feel like it. But there's no way to say it is wrong or right in an absolute sense. There's no way to say anything is wrong or right in an absolute sense.
Yeah. Okay. I agree. What you're saying is, what I'm hearing you say is the technological revolution or disruption opens up the space for these questions to be asked anew, even though we don't even know where it came from in the beginning.
No, what I'm saying is we're going to have a lot more questions, practical questions about how to proceed that need to be answered now.
Yes.
And without any authority above ourselves, on what basis are we going to answer those questions?
I see. Okay. This is what I am proposing, is that just like when America was founded,
yes,
it was this concept of, hey, the monarchy has been doing its thing for quite some time. Not great. We think we can do this really new, weird thing of democracy and vote people in. We have these two representative bodies, and half the people thought that's insane. Half the body's like, kind of cool, let's try it. So we chose democracy as a form of governance that was supposedly better than the monarch. And so in that moment, we chose a new form of governance in trying to do that. Now, we've been trying to solve the thorny questions of democracy for over 200 years. In fact, we fight about it every single day.
right.
But it's still this basic idea that democracy was superior to monarchy. And what I'm suggesting right now is we are walking into a new phase of existence where we have to answer these questions anew. And we don't know what the answer is, but the foundational observation is don't die. So don't die individually, don't kill each other, don't kill the planet, align AI with don't die. After that, we're going to spend the next unknown period of time fighting about what it means to don't die. But as a species, if you birth artificial intelligence, what do you use it for? Is it to become better at war? Do you become better at killing?
Oh, I couldn't look. I couldn't agree with your conclusions more. I mean, I strongly agree with them.
Rightly, Tucker points out that we still need a code of morality to Brian, but then he goes on and says something silly. If I feel like killing you because it pleases me, how can we oppose that? As Dostoevsky believed, and as I've addressed before, he thought that people without religion would murder each other left and right. I, among many others out there, are good without God. We are living our lives in peace as atheists. How is that possible? Because there is such a thing as a secular moral code to live by. Let me shout again, objectivism. Reality is the only thing I follow to come up with my code. Would killing another person make me feel good? No. Would I end up in prison for life for it? Yes. Would it lead to my rational happiness to be trapped in a cage for the rest of my life or be haunted by the flashbacks of committing such a heinous crime? No. So why do it? If Tucker took one psychology class, then he would hopefully understand that people do seemingly crazy things for typically obvious reasons. There are all kinds of reality-based reasons that people harm each other. They don't require a mysterious demon on their back to harm themselves or another for money, fame, revenge, justice, you name it. There's almost always a reason for the action taken. And then Tucker dares to say that we can't say murder is wrong without God, and Brian Johnson just goes along with it. Ayn Rand discusses crime in particular as a crime is a violation of the right or rights of other men by force or fraud. It is only the initiation of physical force against others, i.e. the recourse to violence, that can be classified as a crime in a free society, as distinguished from a civil wrong. Ideas in a free society are not a crime, and neither can they serve as a justification of a crime. So it is wrong to kill someone because they have a right to their own life. Though this can be teetering on the brink of a trolley problem if the killing is given without the proper context. I don't have the space to look at the law in depth here, but that is why we have a court system in the first place. To determine if a killing or any other crime was in self-defense or not. Killing in self-defense to protect your own life is not morally wrong. It's what becomes necessary for your own survival. So it can neither be right nor wrong. Ayn Rand has always said that morality ends where a gun begins. A moral system can only be followed when a man has a choice. That choice is simply robbed from him whenever another threatens to kill him, and vice versa. Unfortunately, both men lack the clear answer that Ayn Rand has provided, and which Tucker believes remains unsolved.
Just wondering about the basis upon which you reach them. And so without God, how can we say, and why would we say, that life is better than death? I mean, the religious person, the Christian, says life is better than death because God creates life. Mm-hmm. And only he can. And by the way, that's still true. We can, for all the tinkering we do to life, we can't create it. There's no evidence we'll ever be able to create it. So that might be a tell that we're not God right there, in my view, but you can disagree. But we still can't create it, and there's no evidence we'll ever be able to. So the Christian looks at this and says, life is better than death because life is God's creation. But why would the atheist accept that as true? On what basis? Life is better because I've got an awesome life. Some person might say I've got a shitty life. Like death is better. Like how, I don't understand if there's no common agreement that there's a force beyond ourselves, why we would reach that conclusion.
Yeah. Or maybe reframed, it's a person's option to life that they can choose whether they want to have that or not. Whereas right now, death is inevitable. We don't get to choose. We don't get to choose disease or death.
Right. Okay.
And so it's the option to. So in many ways, I'm currently working to create a don't die nation state. So if you're serious about not dying, and this again, not for immortality, but just for the purpose of we're at the dawn of a new era as a species, and we're going to try to create some stable structure for birthing superintelligence.
Yes.
Then you can walk into that, and no government in the world is helping its citizens not die. Really basic things like blood draws and therapies and medical care. It's very much treat the symptoms when they arise, or when you're near end of life, let's keep you alive for some short duration of time. But otherwise, we don't do a good job. And so I'm trying to figure out how to create a new societal structure that has the sole objective, a nation state, of helping its citizens not die.
Well, of course, the first order of business would be to construct a military to defend yourselves against people who wanted to kill you anyway. Because not everyone agrees that you should get to live, of course. But yeah. So, but let me ask you, like, maybe there's a shortcut to all this. And I so admire your energy and your willingness to think about questions that most people don't bother to think about, but can feel are important. Everything you've said, I can feel it's important. Like, this is not nonsense what you're saying at all. But why wouldn't it just be a lot easier to blow up all the processing centers, save ourselves like the massive climate change inducing energy draw that AI really is? If you're worried about the planet, we got to stop this crap immediately, because we can't generate the power for it, and arrest everyone who's getting rich, imposing this revolution on the world. Like, why? That's a lot easier. You could do that in an afternoon with nuclear weapons. And why wouldn't you, if you thought it would help us, quote, not die?
I mean, the systems we have as a society today enables those things, right? Like the ability to create a corporation, to make money, to use that money to acquire more power. These are systems that humans have created. It's how the world works.
Sure.
And
so was Auschwitz. I mean, so
what I'm saying is that AI is going to improve at a speed that's going to challenge how these structures are.
I couldn't agree more.
And when that happens, there's going to be an opening. There's going to be a power vacuum. And it's not going to be very clear anymore who's in charge. Who has authority? Who can verify identity? Where can you keep money? Is money secure? All these basic questions of society. And so what I'm suggesting is, as a species, we increase our probability of surviving if we can rally around one thing that we can all agree upon. Now, the don't die. If we disagree one layer above, great. Like,
wait, I get it. I totally get it. And I hate to reduce everything to if you could kill baby Hitler, would you?
This was another doozy when Tucker asks, without God, how can we say, and why would we say, that life is better than death? I mean, the religious person, the Christian, says life is better than death because God creates life. At no point did I grow up thinking that death was better than life. I am baffled that a Christian honestly wonders why life is better than death. Only if you truly believe in this blissful afterlife that you have no proof exists, could you see death as anything other than horrifying and an enemy to mankind. Life is much more exciting, first of all, than oblivion, and more than what I imagine would be a dull place after the high wears off in the afterlife. You can only feel the highest of highs on earth and develop a greater understanding when you have lost a value and felt the lowest of the lows. Death is simply a negation of life, the absence of life. I do not want to be a void, I want to live. And the world is beautiful to me on its face, not because someone divine created it. Nature creates its own wondrous patterns, and it excites me to learn about them. And as humans have learned, every species has evolved with these attributes due to some advantage for their survival. We have this beautiful and still very mysterious mind, and I gaze in spiritual wonder at its beauty with no need to have a sole creator of the entire world. Yet I believe that I go to that same spiritual realm of emotion that a Christian does, but completely devoid of God.
But it is sort of a question like that, because, like, you would not disagree if I said, here's what we know. We know that AI is likely to spawn some improvements, also certain to kill millions of people. Millions will die because of this. I don't think there's any doubt about it. The chaos alone, right, will cause that. I'd bet my house on that. That's going to happen. Why let that happen? Why not just strangle this puppy in the crib? Like, seriously, why wouldn't you, as a rich guy, fund a bunch of saboteurs to blow up the data centers and to take out the people pushing this crap and to try and end it? Go full Unabomber. Like, honestly, why couldn't you justify that?
It would be a question, what path do you think creates a higher probability of survival? Do we think that technology, or do we think we humans are a better path? I mean, for example, I look at my own self-destructive behaviors and not trusting myself. Do we really think that we humans are trustworthy to chart a path where we survive ourselves?
I don't know. I mean, it's of course hard to know. Potentially not, for sure. And I definitely don't trust myself, as noted. But I have a soul and a machine doesn't. And so that gives me kind of an advantage, I would say a moral advantage over the machine. And therefore, I'm a preferable father, for example, to my children than my iPad would be.
Yeah.
Because I have a soul and the iPad doesn't. And so, but again, but that's a theological distinction. But as a practical matter, like there's no way you can look into the camera and say AI is not likely to kill millions of people, because you know that it is. The effect of it will kill people, for sure. The displacement that you described, the power vacuum you described, the chaos that you described correctly, you're predicting. That's real, in my view. So millions will die because of that. So why wouldn't you just take your money and try to blow it up in the name of saving millions?
I think the probabilities of our survival are higher with AI.
Oh, even though millions will die.
I don't accept the premise.
You don't? You really don't?
I really don't. Millions are dying because of the food industry.
Yeah,
Millions are dying because of environmental toxins. Millions are dying because of, it's certainly death is happening at a societal scale for a lot of things that we humans are doing. Now, sometimes it's not born of malice. Like we're just trying to improve.
I agree. I totally agree with everything you just said. That's all true.
Yeah. But I think this is back to your statement though, Tucker.
So you actually think AI, so I think I've misread what you were saying. I thought you were saying this historically transformative thing is about to happen and we've got to prepare ourselves for it. And the implication would be that's a kind of bad and scary thing. But you're saying actually for all the displacement and suffering it's going to cause, it's still better than if we didn't have it.
Exactly. And I'm specifically, I'm saying that when I listen to what the world is saying, so we're giving birth to the superintelligence, what do we do? The only argument I've heard is universal basic income.
Well, that's just childish. Like
it's not a solution. That's
the midwit solution. That's the I'm running for president as the fake smart tech guy. Maybe we should have UBI. Okay.
We have no plan. We've given no thought.
I agree.
And we don't even know. We can't even fully comprehend how big of a problem this is and on what scale. And so what I'm trying to do is get out in front of this to say it's big, it's serious. And
wait a second, you're contradicting yourself, Brian Johnson. You just said a minute ago you think it'll be an improvement over what we currently have.
Yes. Okay.
But then you're saying a sentence later that it's such a huge problem that we need to like mobilize all forces to fix it.
It's a problem because it's going to create chaos among humans.
Yeah.
And humans in uncertain circumstances are very dangerous.
I totally agree.
And so what I'm suggesting is if we're trying to improve the likelihood that we survive as a species, that we do, our children do, their children do, and I'm trying to say, how do we optimize that? Then yes.
But I still just want to go back to like, why not save ourselves? I mean, there's something sort of classically American or Western or overfed, too much money, passive about the society that I live in and all of us live in. We're just like, well, it's going to happen. It's like, why doesn't somebody stop it?
Yeah.
Why even go through all this drama? These are just machines. Like, let's go full Luddite and just take them out. No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
And arrest these creepy people who are trying to impose this dystopia on our children.
So there's another way. I understand what you're saying. There's another way to think about it, though.
It doesn't include blowing up data centers and arresting these people?
I mean, okay, so let's just say, at what point in time have humans known all things? So we walk back through history and say, what did humans know then? And what do we know now? And there's been a track record of we haven't known all things. In fact, we've known a very shallow set of things. It's like even if you said, how big is reality a few hundred years ago, you wouldn't be able to say, oh, there's a microscopic world down to the nanoscale and beyond. There's this big universe on this scale at this size. You wouldn't say there's an electromagnetic world that's 1 trillion times bigger than what we can see. You wouldn't be able to say reality is like trillions of times bigger than what we experience. And so if you say, what could our conscious experience be? What could existence be in a few decades? It may be orders of magnitude larger than what we have now. So I realize we come at this now with this fear response. We're saying we can pattern things that we've seen, but going forward, we may be cavemen and have no idea what we're talking about.
Oh boy. Tucker says, you would not disagree if I said, here's what we know. We know that AI is likely to spawn some improvements, also certain to kill millions of people. Millions will die because of this. I don't think there's any doubt about it. The chaos alone, right, will cause that. Why not just blow it all up, essentially? Wow. His answer is like a mix of utilitarianism and nihilism and a Luddite mentality. First of all, the lawsuits brought against Elon Musk and his self-driving Teslas, as far as I am aware, are all due to user error and not because of the algorithm itself. People are the ones still harming themselves when they don't use their brains or follow directions. AI is much safer and helps to keep us safer than we've ever been before. There is no guarantee, as Tucker is saying, that artificial intelligence will kill millions. There already has been no such apocalyptic scenario as he fears. If anything, more people have survived a surgery that a doctor's shaking hand would have botched years ago that a robot did without a single error. Heck, I had LASIK done with the help of AI and lasers to fix my nearsightedness, and that was the closest thing I've ever seen to a miracle. Brian Johnson is able to make somewhat of an argument similar to mine to Tucker, that humans are more fallible than AI is, which does seem to be the case thus far. And I'm thankful that at least Brian was able to say that he does not accept the premise of AI killing millions in the future.
Right. I mean, I think that's where we are now. We don't have any idea what we're talking about. We can't anticipate the future. We're limited in our foresight, in our knowledge, and particularly in our wisdom. I completely agree with all of that. But the idea that harnessing the computing power of machines will inform us to a greater degree ignores what just happened over the last 30 years, where everyone now has the Encyclopedia Britannica, which, as we used to call it, in his pocket in the form of an iPhone, where all human information is available. And like, people are way more ignorant than they were 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And moreover, any machine we create will never be able to answer the questions that actually matter, like, why is my wife mad at me? Or no machine can ever determine that and with certainty, or even explain, like, how does life begin? So, right?
Well,
can AI tell me why my wife is mad at me?
Yes. I mean, you yeah.
Come on.
You give it some time and you're going to get a readout of here's her hormone levels, here's her biochemical state, this is her sleep score, this is her diet, here's her exercise protocol. Tucker, given these variables, here's the best course of action.
But that's the mechanistic answer.
It translates to Tucker. What would be nice is, right, words of encouragement and of softness and of inquiring how.
Sure, but again, that's I mean, I guess we're back to where we started, and I'll stop with this before I make reservations to come to your house for a broccoli dinner and have 5 existential crises before the dessert. There's no dessert, right?
There's no dessert.
I'll come anyway. But anyway, the point is, this ignores an entire universe, which may be the most important universe, which is the spiritual universe. And every civilization that left any trace of itself has believed in that universe.
Sure.
But for the last 80 years, we haven't, and we're proceeding into the future on the basis of no belief in that. And it seems like it ignores, like, questions of right and wrong, of sin and virtue, of redemption, like, all of those totally missing. And that plays a role too. It's not just how much exercise did you get, how many hours did you sleep, what'd you eat.
Sure.
Feelings are not just the result of biochemical processes. They're the result of forces that exist outside of us. Spiritual forces, unseen forces.
I agree with you. And this may be the most spectacular spiritual existence in our history. Like, this is absolutely, like, you and I have the same conscious experience of reality. We may have different ideas about reality, but we experience it in a very similar way. And what I'm suggesting is the promise of this time and point is we may be on the cusp of the most spectacular existence in this part of the galaxy. We don't know that intelligent life lives anywhere in the galaxy. We can't find it. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. We're the only life we can see. and we're now giving birth to super intelligence. This moment may be the time to set aside our petty little things and say, really, it's us in this moment? And we get to experience a spiritual nature that is just mind-boggling. This is our moment. Why would
Is
we
there
squander it?
any? I'm so rooting for the future you describe. I really am. You said at the outset that you were no longer a believer because there's no evidence, which I think is a fair thing to say. I disagree, but I respect your evidence-based standard, okay? Where's the evidence that technology has ever brought people closer together, has ever done anything but enable people to be people, which is to use it in part for good ends, better food, more food, and evil ends, nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
Like I just don't think that there's any evidence for what you're saying.
Yeah, it's because humans have been playing the game die. So it's not that technology has virtue or is without virtue. Technology is neutral. Humans have used it for their purposes of war and power acquisition and wealth. It's what we've always been doing. And that's what I'm suggesting. That's what we need to eliminate from society, the causes of death. And that includes warfare. It includes fast food. It includes all the things we do to ourselves and to each other and the planet.
But until we can account for why we do it to ourselves, we're probably not going to change it.
But
and I think the most obvious explanation is we're being acted on by demons and this is how every religion that I'm aware of has described it correctly, in my opinion, acted on by demons whose goal is to destroy and kill people, and they're counterbalanced by God. But if you don't agree with that, then you need to substitute another explanation in its place in order to proceed in the hope that we can change. Otherwise, we're just in this cycle with more powerful technology that allows us to do the same evil things, but at a greater scale.
I mean, am I not a demon?
Are you not a demon? You don't seem like one. My demon assessment abilities aren't great.
I mean, like, have we correctly labeled ourselves angels or the good guys and incorrectly labeled the demons the bad actors? Am I not the demon?
I don't know. I guess what I'm it's all in the definition. But I guess the core observation remains the same, which is people are subject to forces outside of themselves, which are unseen. Not all of this is the product of sleep cycles or carb intake.
Or maybe it is.
I don't see any evidence for that because it's remained constant throughout all time that we're aware of. This pattern has never changed, and it's existed in times when people were getting massive amounts of aerobic exercise because they had to walk through the fields all day, when they were eating no carbs, when they were hunter-gatherers, or whatever. It's like it's always been true. So, like, why?
What's your guess?
Well, my certainty is that we are being acted on by spiritual forces that we cannot see, that there is a war going on all around us, out of our sight, not perceived by our senses most of the time, between good and evil.
Yeah.
And that's hardly an original insight.
I'm with you. So
you're with me.
I'm with you. What I heard you say is there's more to reality than we can see.
Yes.
There's forces which we can't identify, and we should address those. We're on the same page after the same thing.
What are those forces?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what we need to figure out. That's the whole objective of this endeavor, is to identify what we cannot see and reconcile with and eliminate the forces that deteriorate our life experience. Well, in all of its capacity, spiritual, physical, all of it. We're saying the same thing after the same objective.
It's going to take me a day to process that.
It does.
Brian Johnson, I will see you at dinner.
Great.
Thank you for that conversation. I really appreciated it.
We don't have any idea what we're talking about, and we can't anticipate the future. We're limited in our foresight, in our knowledge, and particularly in our wisdom. And then he comes up with this example of no robot ever being able to tell him why his wife is mad at him. And Brian Johnson says that we can use AI to tell us that answer. To which Tucker says that this is too mechanistic and ignores the most important universe, which is the spiritual universe. I shouted here, objectivism! Tucker claims again that we are controlled morally by spiritual forces, unseen forces, and that he doesn't see any evidence in what Brian is saying. And Brian Johnson agrees that this is a very spiritual moment for all of us on this planet, and that AI is neutral and that we give it meaning, which I agree with. Brian says he wants to eliminate the causes of death, to which Tucker retorts, but until we can account for why we do it to ourselves, we're probably not going to change it. And I think the most obvious explanation is we're being acted on by demons whose, and this is how every religion that I'm aware of has described it correctly, in my opinion, acted on by demons whose goal is to destroy and kill people, and they're counterbalanced by God. But if you don't agree with that, then you need to substitute another explanation in its place in order to proceed in the hope that we can change. One more time, I scream objectivism. There is a battle between good and evil, as Tucker mentions, but it is not in an unseen realm. It is between individual human beings. It is happening every second of every day, and that is why civilization has emerged to manage those fights through our military, courts, and police, aka our government on a global scale, and with the help of philosophy and psychology and other sciences on an individual scale. Finally, Brian Johnson says, I'm with you. What I heard you say is there's more to reality than we can see. There's forces which we can't identify, and we should address those. We're on the same page, after the same thing. Neither man can seem to prove what forces are acting on us to determine our actions or our code of morality. Objectivism would say that human beings with free will are driven by their minds to survive, to live, to be happy. That's it. There is nothing more than that as a species. To live healthy, wealthy, and wise, as John Clark, and more famously Benjamin Franklin said, is to live happily on this earth. That should be our only goal, our only mission in life. Thanks for joining me this month on the Atheist Nun channel. If you found value in this show, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on AmericanWordsmith.com, where you can buy my novels, The Paper Pusher, The Dormant Age, A Man of Silence, and A Man of Action. Be sure to tune in next month for a new episode. Take care.